Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to our behind-the-scenes look of the latest Living World release, The Tower of Nightmares. Ooh, it's very, very scary. My name's Stephen Waller, and I am the coordinator on the Living World team that's bringing this release.
My name is Matthew Medina, and I am the principal designer for the Living World team for the Tower of Nightmares.
So, if you hadn't noticed, Keswick Hills has changed quite a bit over the last several weeks, and then most recently when the release came out yesterday. And we're here to talk a little bit about what goes into developing the content for a Living World release, and in particular the tower arriving in Keswick Hills.
Yep.
I think it started a release ago, basically, when the players recognized that there was a veil in the lake, Viathan Lake in Keswick Hills, and that Marjorie and Casimir had actually set up a camp there to investigate.
Right. Yeah. We always love seeing the kind of fan reaction that we see when we put something into a release that doesn't have a lot of fanfare. We did this with Lost Shores with the beach whales, and that got us a lot of player interest, and they really were kind of speculating on what this could mean. And so we wanted to do something similar for this. So we had the veil, which appeared in Keswick Hills, and it was a big mystery about what was behind this veil. We knew that there was some sort of illusion, and we knew that it was blocking player access to the lake, so they couldn't swim through it anymore. They had to go around it. And so it was really interesting to be able to put something like that in and see how people respond to it.
Yeah, and I think the visual changes there as well really got people interested, because all the beautiful trees and grass and flowers and stuff had kind of been wiped out a bit, and you could see big groupings of logs and stuff that had been set up both on the surrounding beach and under the water. So, and even the audio of kind of some construction sounds going on there really set the tone for what we were wanting to create with this release. You know, when we're looking at developing Living World content, there's a lot that goes into it. And, you know, to get to the point where we are now, it's been about, I don't know, 4 months at a minimum to really to develop the content to be able to release like we did yesterday. And that's because there are a lot of different moving parts and a lot of things that sort of have to happen in a certain sequence. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but it is kind of an involved process that involves a lot of people contributing at a lot of different levels and at various points along the way. And we're going to talk about some of that stuff. Right now what we're looking at is the lovely Autumn, our embedded QA, is playing through the first story instance that people will encounter when they enter into Keswick Hills. This was designed to basically give players an introduction to the new species, as well as start to tell them what had happened with the veil. Right,
so there's a big lore reason for us doing a story instance, obviously, because you're coming to the map and you're going to see this massive tower, and the sky is completely changed and everything. So we really wanted to just have a reason why all that stuff took place, and that's not always easy to do in the open world, because everybody's excited. They're running around. They're finding events. They're finding content. They kind of get distracted. A story instance really allows us to kind of get in there and tell exactly what happened. And in particular, a change like this that's so major, we really needed to be able to communicate a strong reasoning for what's been transpiring. There's also a couple new mechanics in here. The Toxic Alliance have some new skills that were designed by one of our systems design experts, Matt Pennebaker. And so we really wanted to showcase those in a way that was sort of an intimate look at those skills. We also have, for the first time, we have downable enemies, which is a new mechanic as well. Players who have experienced World v. World or PvP are familiar with the mechanic, but somebody who's maybe never stepped foot in a PvP arena doesn't even know what finishing an enemy is like. So we wanted to give them the opportunity to do that in a sort of a safe environment. So we'd introduced it in a way that wasn't intimidating and wasn't something that was sort of throwing you into the fire.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you know, when we think about, you know, now seeing it on screen, I remember back when we were first just talking about it, which is the way that all of these releases start, basically, is we have some goals. In this case, we definitely wanted to make sure that the release had a real impact on the world. That's one of the big goals that we have for the living world, is to have big changes in the world, both with the story, with the environment, etc., and really to progress the world. And so when we started talking about this release, that was one of the high-level goals that we had sort of set at the very top to ensure that we made a change. And here you can see a big visual change. Our environment artist, Kirill, did a great job on sort of dialing in and progressing the look of this landscape, both from the pre-release, where we sort of brought it down, decimated it a little bit, to when the tower is actually revealed. And so, once we start with those high-level goals, the next thing that we generally do is we kind of go into brainstorming. We'll get the team together, we'll get various representatives from sort of key disciplines, and we'll just have several different brainstorming sessions where we'll talk about everything from, key visuals that we might want to see, to parts of the story that we really want to reinforce, or characters that we want to reinforce, maybe some new mechanics that we think would be great to introduce. And as Matthew was mentioning, some of the things that came out of that were the stomping, or introducing a heal skill that would actually help with some of the the toxic effects that this new toxic alliance is putting on players. So it's a great opportunity for everybody on the team and interested parties to really get together and just throw up a bunch of different ideas and discuss around them, and sort of play off of different ideas to see what resonates with everyone, and what really feels like it's going to help make the content feel that much enjoyable for the player.
Yeah, and I think for this release in particular, it was really important to get a lot of ideas in the room, because this started in large part from Daniel Dochu, in terms of wanting to set a really high visual watermark for this release in terms of the tower. I think this is probably the closest we've come to matching his visions. It's very often difficult for us on the content side to take one of Daniel's concepts and say, well, yeah, sure, we can do that, no problem. It's usually a matter of, well, okay, this is amazing. How do we make this work in our game with our engine and our resources? And so this is one of those where getting everybody together to talk about, okay, we have this idea for this massive tower. How are we going to make that a reality? And what are the important pieces that we need to pull together to make that happen?
I mean, that's a great segue to the fact that that is one of the early things that we do once we've kind of got the rough outline, so to speak, of what we're interested in doing. Is we'll work with the concept department, and they'll start doing sketches and providing feedback to the environment artist and to the prop artist, and we're looking at them, and that often drives new ideas as well for us. And so that's one of the groups that we get involved with very early on. The team that's actually focused on the living world is generally about 10 people or so. We have some embedded people on the team. We have content and systems designers. We've got generally a prop artist and an environment artist. We've got embedded QA. Sometimes we have animation embedded on the team. But we also work with sort of external core groups, one of which is concepting, to provide resources to the team, and they help a number of different teams. And so getting the concept going early helps us really dial in what is sort of a rough idea in our heads, and some notes on a whiteboard to really bring it into something that people can visualize and has more meaning that we can sort of shape from there. Once we do that, I think we've kind of got the general idea of what we're trying to do. Then we really start dialing into sort of what would each release look like. In this particular case, we sort of had the pre-release, which was the veil and it showing up. Not much content there, but we definitely, like Matthew said, wanted to have some sort of teaser stuff in there, get people interested, let them know that the tower isn't built overnight, that something is afoot and they should be prepared for it. But then there was this release, which was, okay, the tower is there, but it's not an immediate entry. They have defenses of their own, and so we wanted to sort of build that as our main, what is the problem that the player is trying to solve, and it's figure out how to get past this new toxic defense that is surrounding the tower, as well as to get familiar with the new mechanics and the environment and the story, and give them some time to really absorb that part.
Yeah, and speaking of story, we just are about to see the cinematic at the end of this instance for telling the story of how the Nightmare Tower was discovered. Marjorie and Casimir, who you find in this instance You come to their rescue. Basically, they are holding out at Old Red Wharf against the Toxic Alliance. They're kind of behind enemy lines, so you have to like fight your way through to them and take out this Toxic Oratus, who is basically equivalent of like a high priest for the crate.
And I'll interject there too. That's a new creature model.
That is.
Which is another group that we work with, the character creature team, which will create artwork for the teams to use. Sorry to interrupt.
No, and that brings up another point too. Of when we worked with the creature team, we gave them a request for things that we would need, and immediately they fired back with, "Well, could we do something to the regular crate to make them cooler?"
Yeah.
So that's where the idea for the glow for these guys came from. We knew from the get-go what our enemy group was going to be called in terms of being toxic, but we didn't really have the concept that, well, that would make sense if they actually glowed. It was the character art team who came up with that and said, well, this would be really, really cool for us to do. We have the time to do it, so let's do it. And so
yeah, and it fit in with what we were saying, which was, there is this toxin, and this group has sort of been entrenched or enclosed with this toxin for quite some time, and
Right.
this has sort of permeated them and changed them at some level. And so that's why they are sort of their own new species, the toxic species that has their own skill sets and things that are related. And I think we've noted that the Nightmare Court involvement here this is not sort of the core Nightmare Court.
Right.
It's a faction of that, and I believe there's some hints to the fact that may be the case with the crate as well. And so, again, I look at that model and I almost think of like Jabba the Hutt a little bit. He kind of got the little belly on him going there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, it's a lot of coordination with various groups, but one of the things that we do have to think about too is, scoping what we're doing. So we have all these great ideas. We're never short for ideas. What we are sometimes short for is the ability to do everything that we could possibly want. And so, once we have all these ideas and we've started getting some concepts and refining it, we really need to go through a phase, and we work with production on this to sort of dial in, based on the size of the team and what all the core service groups are working on and other groups that they're supporting, what we might be able to do, sort of, what's doable within the time frame that we have. And I think in this case, we actually were able to do quite a bit, some of which is going to be shown in the next release, which we're not going to give away any
Right.
secrets on, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And then the next phase, I think, is, we've sort of scoped it to a reasonable level. There's the granularity involved of we don't know exactly how long every little thing's going to take because it is a creative process, and we are sort of adjusting to find the fun as we go. But we do want to go through and sort of review the design with scope in mind and get that sort of sign off from various stakeholders and make sure that what we're setting up in our design is going to fit our pillars for Guild Wars 2 and will also be engaging and fun for the player. And I'll stop here for a second so that we can kind of watch this. I think this turned out really great in terms of an in-game cinematic.
This turned out better than I could have hoped, really. When we first talked about this, we actually didn't even necessarily have this in mind to being this big of a cinematic. It was really just going to be, hey, we need this veil to be broken by Casimir. And we dropped this into the laps of our cinematics team, which is an external team to us, but they have been incredibly talented group of guys who they knocked this out of the park as far as I'm concerned. I love this. It's one of the best cinematics I think we've done in the in-game environment. And I think this is just hopefully a sign of things to come as we go forward.
Yeah, and I'll note there the fantastic effects work done by James, who worked on our team from the
Yes.
effects department, as well as the audio guys who came in and did a great job on that.
Right.
We'll talk a little bit more about sort of their involvement as well as we go along here. So once the instance is completed and people have sort of gotten acclimated to what's going on, then we're introducing them to the open world. In terms of the process, so at this point, in the overall development process, we've gone through the design review where we've discussed, okay, here's all the various types of content. There's a story instance. There's going to be an open world. There will be a variety of different events that people will be able to do in and around Kessex Hills. And one of the things that we also want to keep in mind when we're doing that is our quality assurance or QA department and their feedback on what's going to be able to be tested with the resources that they have. Autumn, who is embedded in our team, does a great job. But obviously, for a game the size that we're making and for the amount of content we're we're making it requires the support and hard work of the QA department, and they do a fantastic job of sort of double checking all the stuff that we're putting in and making sure. So we want to make sure early on that we're involving them and saying, these are the things that we're planning to do. Do you guys have any concerns with being able to test this and make sure that it goes out and is really solid content?
Yeah, and it even involves the whole team. We have organized all calls at the company so that we can make sure that we get the numbers, because it's really hard for us, with a living world team the size that we are, and QA being the size that they are, it's impossible for us to simulate what a live environment's going to be without getting actual bodies in there. So we actually make sure that we get everybody to pile in at least once or twice before we ship, so that we get a sense for what balance is going to be like, what scaling is going to be like. It's always a moving target with scaling and balance. We do the best we can. I think we're getting better and better at it, and our content is, I think, showing that. From the Scarlet Invasions to this, I think we're definitely taking strides towards making sure that the open world stuff that we're doing for Living World is hitting the marks on all the pillars that we have for design.
Yeah, and I'll add there too, we work with an alpha group of testers who we love. They always provide us with great feedback and are very valuable to us in getting feedback from people that aren't directly involved with creating the content, and are really hardcore players that love the game, and they're an invaluable service to us as well. And while we're playing here, I'll just note this is one of the events that Ben, a content designer on our team, created, and shows some again of the fabulous effects and the skills work that was done. The little mini version of the tower there was done by Lisa, who's a prop artist on our team, and I think that thing just looks beautiful and deadly at the same time, which is a nice combination. And of course, I mentioned Kirill doing the environment work. That doesn't only include sort of shaping the landscape, that includes setting the tone with the environment in terms of what the clouds and the sky and the lighting and all of that stuff looks like. And I think it all really comes together to set the tone that we were looking for.
Yeah, and there's times when they surprise us too. I was playing on live yesterday when we released, and this is the first time I'd really got a chance to sit and absorb what we do, because very often we're so busy and we have very focused goals day to day that I'm just looking purely at what I need to look at when I'm testing. I don't always notice some of the little subtle things. Like I didn't even notice until yesterday the sort of caustic effect rolling across the terrain, to simulate that this environment has definitely changed, and there's something really dark and devious going on in here. That's the sort of stuff that just inspires me when I see that sort of stuff. It's like, oh, that's really cool. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when we're developing this content, as I was mentioning, we kind of go through the phase where we're planning what we want to do, and then we scope it and we kind of do our, design reviews on it. Then we have to start looking at the actual dates of when things need to be done. And, when we first opened this live stream, I was mentioning it takes about 4 months currently to get one of these releases from initial sort of idea to releasing it. One of those reasons is the dependencies that we've got. We have text that needs to be written, and there's a deadline for that. There's a deadline for any VO that we want to record, and those are relatively early in the development process, because let's take VO for example. We need to schedule the actors. We need to go out and record them. For text, we need to have it localized. VO, we also have to have it recorded in different languages.
Right.
We have editing teams who will go in behind the text and sort of make sure that everything is sort of grammatically correct and fits the tone for the way that all of our language is done within the game and Tyria itself. And the audio takes some time. VO recordings take some time to get delivered. In some cases, they have to go through processing and then importing into the game. And so those are some of the factors that when we're looking at the scheduling, we have to know, okay, when is the deadline for this? And so the content that we're, let's say, writing VO for, we need to have a good understanding of what that's going to be. So we go through kind of a prototyping phase early on, where we'll take the idea of what, let's say, the story instance is, and start sort of roughing it out and getting the key points so that we can get the text and we can get the VO out early enough to get those other parties that are dependent upon us, moving forward.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of interesting to me when you look at what our release date is, and we are given that up front because we have our 2-week cadence now with Living World, so we know where are the release going to fall. When you back out all those dependencies, it's actually quite amazing how much work needs to get done and how much work we actually do get done in the time frame that we actually get to develop. That's not including testing, that's not including all of the other things that need to happen. So I'm immensely proud of the work that we do on Living World, primarily because it looks like we are doing a lot more than the work would sometimes appear in terms of you just say, oh, we have a 4-month development window. Well, yeah, but we cram a lot more than that, I think, into that 4 months.
Yeah, I think that goes back to there's a lot of different groups that are involved, a lot
Right.
of different moving parts.
Yes.
There are dependencies that have to be met, and there are long chains, things that can't happen until certain other things are done. And so during that prototyping phase, like we were talking about, where we're kind of actually fleshing this out, we've actually got pieces starting to be created by groups, again, outside of the team specifically. So for a big release in particular, like this one where we're changing the map and we're building the tower, we've got external dependencies where we've got the environment art team helping support our environment artists with creating different pieces, parts
Right.
that help create the tower, prop artists that are helping. We've got people on the character art team and all these requests from our team where we're saying, hey, we need support in these different areas. We need UI to be created, icons for a new heal skill, or icons for these toxic offshoots that are appearing on the map. All of those things go out as requests from our team to the various groups that are sort of considered core groups within ArenaNet, and they have their own dependencies and how long things take them, and so they need those requests in at a very early date. So that's one of the things that comes from the prototyping phase, is that we're actually trying to flesh out more of the bits and pieces that actually make up all the various bits of content.
Yeah, and in one of those that you were talking about, UI, with this release, we also had to add, not had to, but we wanted to add a new feature for directing players to our content. So we actually have a directive list now that we can tell players that works very similar to the way that personal story works.
Right.
So it gives players a very specific list of things that they can do. You saw that in the instance, you've seen that a little bit more in the open world, where we're telling you with a bullet point list of, hey, here's what you can do next. Because one of the things that we haven't had up until now was a way to do that, and this is just the first step in a larger system that's going to be going on for the next several releases probably. We'll continue to build on this, but we definitely want to get this into the hands of the players as soon as we possibly could. So we implemented what we had, which is the directive list, and I think it works really well. I think just being able to tell a player, hey, here's a new thing to go do, rather than having to rely on them opening up their achievement tab or looking on a wiki somewhere or doing something like that. It made a lot of sense for us to do that. So I'm really happy that we got that put in.
Yeah, I agree.
For this release.
And in terms of development, once we've sort of done our initial prototyping and we've reviewed that and everybody is feeling good about the directions, we've identified what the big challenges were and we've kind of tested them and made sure that things are going to work or change direction if things don't work. Then we get into the real meat of development, and that's when all of the main content is really getting fleshed out on our team. The props and all that stuff is, they're coming in, they're getting hooked up.
Yeah.
Icons are getting hooked up. We're really fleshing out the skills. The creatures are coming in and we're getting them in the game. The weapons that you see, which are a really cool weapon set that the Toxic Alliance is using, are coming in and we're seeing them in the context of the environment and sort of adjusting the overall color palette, and all those kinds of things are coming in during the main portion of development. And while we're doing that, we're playing it, and so it's constantly back and forth of implementing and testing. It's kind of like cooking almost, where you're putting in some ingredients and you test it and a little more salt or whatever, just to make sure that you're getting sort of the best result out of all of these different pieces that are making up the overall release.
Yeah, at ArenaNet, I mean, the big I word around here is usually innovate, but the other I word we tend to throw around a lot is iterate.
Yeah.
We do a lot of iterating. We do a lot of, let's just get this in. Like with the story instance, for example, that was the content that I worked on for this release. We got something up and running, very quickly, so that we could at least start working on it as soon as possible. Have people play through it and just give us feedback of like, well, we know this is broken, but overall, as an experience, how does this feel? And then we go back to the drawing board and say, okay, players like this, they didn't like this, so let's adapt and adjust. And so it's a constant back and forth, a versioning basically of everything that we do. And that's how it's always been. And I think that's the soul of our company, is the ability to do that. It's a little bit tougher to do when you have all these moving parts, as Stephen was saying, but it's, I think, paramount for us to continue to do things like that, because it's how we get the quality level that we're needing to hit every release.
Yeah, and that reminds me too of, there are other sort of infrastructure parts to this, right? We've got people who are developing the tools that allow us to iterate more quickly and to get content into the game and test it and see if it works very rapidly. And so there's people that are helping us with the workflow of how all these various teams are working simultaneously, and that we can release our content separately from Halloween and have overlap where we want to. And all of that requires a lot of infrastructure that's been set up and has evolved quite a bit since the original release of Guild Wars 2, to the point now where we can release things on a cadence of every 2 weeks, and the restructuring of the company at some level to have the ability to have all these different teams working and overlapping each other, and having features and having sort of living world content and having PvP and world versus world. All of these different groups are developing content and ultimately kind of have to come out of the final pipe, which is the release that people finally see.
Yeah, and even to speak to that point, having something which we call branching, which enables different teams of different disciplines or different departments to be working simultaneously without interrupting each other's work, so that one Living World release isn't changing a file that then impacts somebody else. So if we do something that, well, it happens, we break things, so in the course of development, if we break a build, it's only going to impact our team, so we only have to fix it for us. The rest of the teams can go on working, but they don't have to wait for us to fix the build break. They can just go on, and once then we get to a point where we're comfortable, we flatten everything together and merge everything together, and it's all worked really, really well for us. So it's a really good process for us to be able to have multiple teams leapfrogging like this.
I'll also note here while we're watching that this is one of the events that Jeff, one of the content designers on our team, did. He was involved in doing a lot of the open world events that people are enjoying with this particular release, whether it's the Ukraine Caves area or if it's the escort that we're seeing right now. There's also the Mud Bay Digs?
Mud Bay Digs,
Mud
yes.
Bay Digs, I always say that incorrectly. But, there's the events that go on over there. There are the champions that take over waypoints as well. And a lot of that was work that Jeff did for our team.
And even as simple as changing out the base creatures that inhabit the area. We don't want to ever make a change to the world like this that doesn't feel like it should impact the area, and that's something that we're going to continue to get better at. We haven't always been able to do that because of there have been limitations and things like that. We're working very hard now on making sure that any changes that we make that are going to be considered permanent changes, like Cassock Hills being completely different now, we are definitely going to have to adjust the things that were there to compensate for the fact that things are changing, because that's what the living world is for us. It's about making sure that the world feels like it's alive and it's changing, and it's never going to be static.
Yeah, I'm also thinking while we're watching this that with all of the different moving parts and the challenges and so forth, I'm still amazed and grateful to be able to work on making a video game and making a release like this. It's a lot of fun, going through from when we first started brainstorming and all the ideas that were up there, and then we see them come to fruition, and we see players engaging in it and talking about it and doing things in different ways. It's really something that the teams enjoy quite a bit, and to see all those ideas finally reality is really a fun experience. It's something that we're proud of and grateful to be able to work on.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry quite a while. You would think that I would burn out on it, but no, I still love my job every day I come in, and I'm just excited about the work that we're doing here with Living World. I think it's definitely innovating in a way that I haven't seen other games or other studios doing quite in the way that we're doing it. So I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to see what we do next.
Yeah, I agree. And the camaraderie between the team is really good. We have designers and artists and QA animators, et cetera, all sitting together. And so people have a better understanding of the challenges for each department, and working together as a team really helps people understand that it's not like that guy over there did something. It's the person that sits next to you, and you value their contribution, and you're working with them towards the same goal. Everyone wants the same goal, which is to make something really fun. We're players ourselves. We get in there and play all the content. We're in the game playing with you guys, and so everybody has that same goal of really trying to make sure that we're making the best possible content that we can.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we have to believe in what we do, and I think that's been proven out time and time again with our Living World releases and our teams here. I think we're all invested in this, and we all care greatly about how this is received by you guys, and that's why we love going in on release days and just seeing you all take it in, and it just warms my heart. I don't know, maybe I'm just sappy, but I love it. So
yeah, I love it too. In terms of where we are in the process, kind of getting back to the behind the scenes portion. So by the time we've kind of gotten through the majority of development, we've got most everything hooked up. We'll go through some final reviews where we're really trying to say, everything's locked in the way we expect it to be. We've got all the UI elements in, sort of all the messaging, whether it's a mail or the content direction system, all the ways that people are going to be able to understand what's going on. All the skills are hooked up. We want to be able to play that content and make sure that, it's all fitting together and working the way we expected. And there's QA time at that point where they're really needing to look at the content and say, you guys aren't making any more changes to this stuff. It's locked down, and we can go through, and when they're finding bugs, we're kind of in a bug fixing mode where things that we didn't expect get logged, and then we're fixing those bugs as we're headed closer to release. But there are other things too that are going on. We've got marketing who's starting to get the web page that's going to announce the release set up, and the images and the videos that go up to help get people interested and excited about the release. They're working on that. They're doing promotions to help people get emails that talk about what the release will be. And so there's that side of it too that's going on. We've got writers that write the text for the sort of more loreful bits about what the release is about. We're writing the release notes, which are going to go out with the release. And so all of this is kind of coming in towards the end. The audio group is also doing a bit more of their work towards the end, because now everything's kind of locked down and they can go in and attach the sound effects to various props or to various skills. They can make sure that the music and the ambience is dialed in the way that they want. All of the final localization is back and integrated. And so all these things are kind of coming in towards the very end and being QA'd to make sure that everything's ready to go, that we feel confident that the release is going to be a good one for you guys, something that's going to be fun and interesting for the players that love Guild Wars and want to have an enjoying Living World release.
Yeah.
So at that point, when everything looks good and we're ready, everyone's excited, and we're sort of ready to hit the release button. We've got producers who are also involved with sort of live releases and live production and the timing of getting the release out there and making sure that the time when we plan to release it actually hits that or as close to that as we possibly can. And then everyone is sitting back and waiting. We jump into the game, and we're ready to be there with all of you guys to play our content. And I have to say, all this time we've been talking, Autumn's been doing a great job of running through and really beating up on the Toxic Alliance, doing her part for Tyria to help fight this menace.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, as we're wrapping up here, I just want to again say that, there are a lot of moving parts involved. It does take time, and sometimes it takes a little while for us to, adjust. We are working in a live environment where, we look at the feedback that people have, things that they like, things that they don't necessarily like, and we're always wanting to listen to our player base and sort of align with them on making, experiences that they are happy with. And we've got a variety of different ways that we do that. But we do really care about what people think about our content, and we're constantly adjusting. And times when maybe things go a little bit slower than people might like, I would just say, please, hopefully, be patient with us. It takes a little time to get everything together and out there to you, but we are dedicated to constantly improving, the Living World and Guild Wars 2 in general. And we appreciate all the people that play the game and provide feedback to us. You know, we're in there playing with you guys too, and we really appreciate all the time and effort that people invest in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to also reiterate something that Chris Whiteside, our design director, has said on the forums about the collaborative development. We are definitely serious about that. We absolutely are very interested in hearing what you guys have to say and working together to make this game something that we all enjoy and can benefit, you know, from greatly, because this is your game as much as it is ours. We can't have the game without you guys. So definitely, if you haven't been to the forums, go check those out, and we'll definitely be reading all that feedback. So.
Yeah. So I'd like to say, you know, as we wrap up, thank you very much for playing the release.
Yep.
And
thank you.
Thanks for coming out for a little. Oh wait, hang on a second. What's going on here?
Hey, there's already one Matthew in this shot.
The Toxic Alliance will be here for some time, gentlemen, but tomorrow is Halloween. And I just wanted to say a few words in defense of His Majesty.
Oh boy.
Okay.
The fog rolling in, the red moon on the rise. Can you see all the signs? It's beginning. Door hinges creak, the sky fills with crows, and all of the pumpkins start grinning. Around every fire, the stories turn grim, and it seems as though mirth may be fleeting. Ready or not, the dead start to rise with their own thoughts on tricking and treating. But it's not a time to go hiding away in the closets where cowards will shiver. The Mad King is here, and though he takes lives, at his heart, he's really a giver. Just look to the past, to the games that he played, and all of the joy he provided. His demands weren't that strange. He rewarded the loyal, leaving few necks and bodies divided. Yes, his head is on fire, his aesthetic macabre, and most of his servants are bony, but he's a romantic and a lover of music, and exceptionally kind to his pony. As for his son, well, the less said, the better. That boy is certainly crazy. If he thinks the Mad King is cause for a ruckus, well, his memory must be quite hazy. I'm sure the Grim Japer was a hell of a dad, and being his child was dandy. Just think of the feasts, his penchant for jokes, and the piles and piles of candy. So deal with Prince Eddie, get back to the fun, and do as the Mad King commands. It's Halloween, and while you search for prizes, he holds your life in his hands.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Have a happy Halloween and
Happy
enjoy
Halloween.
the Tower of Nightmares. And we look forward to you guys seeing what's going to be coming up in the next release. We think it's going to be
Yep.
very interesting.
Very.